Now, welcome back. Now, that's our report on how the National Assembly fared in 2014. How would you rate the National Assembly's performance in 2014? I look forward to having your comments. You can reach us through any of our addresses on the screen. Up next is a chat I had with Chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Rules and Business, Albert Sam-Tsokwa. We started with his assessment of the National Assembly in 2014.
From June 2011 to December 2014, the House received and processed 736 bills in all, out of which 101 were passed. And as we speak, I know that Mr. President has assented to 29 of such bills that have been passed. Okay. But from June 2014 to December 2014, the House received and processed 53 bills and was able to pass 19 bills within that period.
Now, as a chairman of the, some would say, the engine room, the committee that really helps to put together the business of the House, how would you say the National Assembly indeed has performed so far in lawmaking?
We came in with a legislative agenda. This legislative agenda was laid in public domain. And I would want the public to look at the legislative agenda and look at what the National Assembly has done and come out with a conclusion, with a judgment as to whether we've been able to live up to our expectations as our commitment to Nigerians in the legislative agenda. In any case, 2 years into the 4-year tenure, no less a person than the Emeritus Professor of Political Science, Professor Eligu, was invited to come and mark the script of the National Assembly. Alongside Professor Eligu was Barrister Femi Falana, SAN. You know, these are very critical minds. These gentlemen came, assessed the National Assembly, and gave the National Assembly, or particularly the House of Representatives, a pass mark. In fact, both gentlemen scored the National Assembly above 50. And going by that, I would say proudly that by my own assessment, the National Assembly has fared, has kept to its promise, has kept to its commitment to Nigerians in the terms of discharging their legislative functions, their representative functions, their oversight functions, and whatever you may think of. For the first time in the history of this country, the legislature has been able to call the executive to order. Even if not much has been achieved, at least the House of Reps and the National Assembly have been able to do what previously had not been done before. In terms of oversight functions, yes, putting such light in places that used to be no-go areas before, bringing out some ruts in governance.
Okay, now let me take you on the issue of the bills passed. Now, I remember during one of the plenary session, a lawmaker from the House of Representatives stood up to note that there had been a lot of what he called the bills passed by the National Assembly that were before the president that were yet to be assented to. I don't know if you have a record of what number right now is before the president that has not been assented to.
In a presidential system where the Constitution specifically donates powers to especially the executive and the legislature, there is inbuilt in that separation of powers a system of checks and balances. The business of lawmaking is entirely that of the legislature. But if the legislature is allowed to pass any bill that it wants, definitely the country may be thrown into a confusion. And so the Constitution vests in the president the power to veto bills that the president may have questions on. So that the president withholds assent in respect of certain bills is a constitutional thing, and I'm not worried about that. But my worry is where Mr. President refuses to indicate whether he is withholding assent or whether he is assenting. A bill is sent to the presidency and the bill goes to sleep there. No more is heard of it. This is really a thing of worry, and I think it is not healthy for our democracy. I thought somebody should be courageous enough to call upon the courts to give an interpretation to this, particularly with respect to Section 58, subsection 5 of the Constitution. Section 58, subsection 5 says, if Mr. President withholds assent and the bill is passed again by the two houses by 2/3 majority, it becomes an act. But what happens where Mr. President does not withhold his assent but just keeps quiet? Do we take it? Do we take withholding? Do we take his silence as assent, as is the case in the US, or do we take his silence as withholding assent? So truly, there are bills pending before Mr. President, the number of which I cannot give. But I've told you that the House has passed 101 bills and only 29 have been assented to. I'm not saying 101 bills have been sent to Mr. President, but I know quite a number, more than the 29 that was signed by Mr. President, have been sent to Mr. President. And Mr. President has not indicated either way as to whether he's withholding assent or that he's signing, and this is not too good for the system.
From the 101 bills passed, how many have been have passed through concurrence, have been concurred with from the Senate?
Well, this is again another very sad aspect of our bicameral legislature. The Constitution insists that no bill can be considered as having been passed except the two chambers pass the bill in identical form. Okay. Now, for a bill to be passed in identical form, if the chamber from which it emanates passes it, it is sent to the other chamber. Then the other chamber will either pass it as sent to it or propose amendment. And once it is amended, the chamber, the originating chamber, must have to agree with the amendment, or failure to so agree, a conference committee is put in place to reconcile. But what happens is that in most instances, bills passed by the House of Representatives and sent to the Senate are not attended to promptly as required. And the same is the case with bills passed by the Senate and sent to the House of Representatives. There is no constitutional provision that stipulates the time limit within which bills passed by one chamber and sent to the other chamber should be dealt with. Like in the case of Mr. President, when the bill is sent to him, he has to act within 30 days. I thought there should be a similar a provision of 6 months, 3 months, 1 year, within which a chamber is required to act on the bill passed by the other chamber. As it is now, I find that the House of Representatives, if it is moving to the east, the Senate is moving to the west. This is not healthy for our bicameral legislature. I am hoping and believing and urging on the leadership of the National Assembly, as will be in place by 2015, to come up with a modality that will ensure that every